agree with Alan Greenspan, we ought to just eliminate the debt ceiling. Oh, absolutely, we do.
The ability of almost every working American to access more credit than they should have been able to masked the underlying fact that lower and middle class incomes were not rising.
That's not a tenable strategy. Isn't now the time to eliminate it? Oh, it would have been a long time ago to eliminate it.
Let's put aside terrorism. Let's talk only about our own homegrown animals that are patrolling America right now. So it goes down to the simplest thing. Be prepared, be vigilant.
Between the desire and the spasm, between the potency and the existence, between the essence and the descent, falls the shadow. For thine is the kingdom, for thine is, life is, for thine is. This is the way the world ends. This is the way the world ends. This is the way the world ends. Not with a bang, but a whimper. Welcome into the I Am Liberty Show. If you think that I am going to roll down a hill over the NFL, you're out of your mind. If you think that I'm going to lose my mind over what these people do during the national anthem, then you need to turn the show off. I'm reading from The Hollow Man, which is a poem by T.S. Eliot, by Thomas Stearns Eliot, born September 26, 1888 in St. Louis, Missouri. One of the great poets of all time. In my opinion. We all have our, Maya Angelou's and whatever, William Shakespeare's, or whoever. T.S. Eliot is one of my favorite by far. And why do I bring up poetry at a time like this? Well, first of all, poetry is always right. Poetry is always right. And whether you're afraid of it or whether you don't understand it, so you mock it, is really irrelevant to me. I give you just a taste of The Hollow Man. And you tell me if there's a more relevant diagnosis for the people who are struggling to find their way in our world today. Okay, this is from the first stanza. We are the hollow men. We are the stuffed men, leaning together. Headpiece filled with straw, alas. Our dried voices, when we whisper together, are quiet and meaningless, as wind in dry grass, or rats' feet over broken glass, in our dry cellar. Shape without form, shade without color, paralyzed force, gesture without motion. Those who have crossed with direct eyes to death's other kingdom, remember us if, at all, not as lost, violent souls, but only as the hollow men, the stuffed men. And when you look at those people who are supposed to be leading us, you look at those people who are supposed to be running things, you look at those people who are supposed to be role models, and they are supposed to be showing the next generation how to act, what to stand for, what to love, what to hate. You can't tell me you don't see the hollow men described by T.S. Eliot in that poem. You see, when I was growing up, I used to do magic. I loved it. I loved magic. I mean, there were times when I would write letters to magicians. Handwritten now. We didn't have a computer at my house, nor a printer. And I would write handwritten letters to magicians, and I would say, I really love what you do. I love your sleight of hand, yada, yada, yada. I'm just looking for my big trick to break into the business. I'm 10, 11 years old at the time. But I've always been the type of person who falls head fully into something. Whatever I'm into, I'm falling face first into it. And I always loved sleight of hand. My father loved sleight of hand. The close-up sleight of hand magicians, the great ones. They always blew my mind. Lance Burton, though he was a pretty mainstream guy, his sleight of hand work was impressive, and I really liked him growing up. But studying magic, doing magic, tricking drunk people in the pizza shops in Marcus Hook taught me that there's always a hand moving when you're not looking, and there's always a hand that you're looking at. And I think that that's really worked for me as I've made this transformation into whatever it is I am now, writer, talker, listener, father, husband, whatever I am. I mean, I'm not really one thing at all, but when I look at news and when I regurgitate what I read to you, I can look at news stories and I see it. It's almost like a magic trick. You look at this NFL story that's dominating. And to me, it's just a sleight of hand. It is an issue because it's affecting generations. It's going to affect the little kids at football games. It's going to affect the little kids at school. It's going to make teachers' lives even more terrifying. And it is an issue, but it's an issue that I'm not going to touch on today. Not in detail. Because the NFL is a problem because it will affect children. But at the end of the day, to me, it looks like, I don't know, I see a sleight of hand. If you ask me, I see a sleight of hand. Not a conspiracy. Not at all a conspiracy. Nothing like that. But I see a media that is so hungry for a story that they'll drive anything. I also want to talk about the privilege of marriage today on the show. An article came out written by some wacko in the New York Times. Claire Kane Miller is the author. In my opinion, Claire Kane Miller. How did marriage become a mark of privilege? I'll just read you the first bit and then we'll get into it later. Marriage, which used to be the default way to form a family in the United States, regardless of income or education, has become yet another part of American life reserved for those who are most privileged. Don't get me started just yet. It's on the docket. Okay, Venezuelan teachers and doctors turning to prostitution to get money for food. You know, in case those hollow men who tout communism, socialism, $15 minimum wage, and all those wonderful utopian ideas, in case you're being bought and sold by those guys, just have a look at Venezuela and understand that the teachers and the doctors have resorted to prostitution in order to feed themselves. We'll read a little bit on that too. We'll read a little bit on that as well, but just an idea of what I want to cover today. I'm not going lowbrow. I'm not going NFL, hoodlum, thugs in shoulder pads, kneeling at games, trying to make a point. There's still no list of demands. What do they want? What do you want? What do you hate? What do you hate for? What are you hating for? Tell me what you're hating for. What do you want? Nobody knows what they want. I don't even think they know what they want. And really, to be honest with you, the whole crux of the issue goes down to the fact that, you know, you can say a lot of things, right? What's dividing America? Well, it's income, it's race, it's this, it's that. There are many different things. It's where people fall on their beliefs. It's religion. If it were truly religion, then black and white wouldn't have anything to say to one another, because what you find is that there's a large contingent of religious whites and blacks who believe in the same God and the same things. But it's not that easy. Nothing is easy. And it shouldn't be easy either. You want to know the greatest cause of division in this nation? I'll tell you right now. We're going to go in depth. I'll tell you the greatest cause of division in the nation. And it has nothing to do with police. It has nothing to do with the KKK. It has nothing to do with the Black Panthers or the Black Lives Movement. It has nothing to do with anything that you're thinking. It doesn't have anything to do with Al Sharpton or David Duke. The greatest source of division, and you can quote me, in this nation is the President of the United States. The crickets are chirping outside. It's a warm night. But I mean this 100%. And maybe it wasn't always this way. Maybe it wasn't always this way. Maybe it was. But I promise you, if you take this nation and you really look at it, and you pull out all the various things and the issues that we believe in and don't believe in, transgender rights, well, whatever the black community wants us to do, that whole thing. If you really look at what divides our nation, what is the most dividing force in our nation? What has it been over the last 20 years? It's been the presidency. How could it not be the presidency? We go to war now over the presidential race, the presidential election. First of all, the race to be president is an ultra marathon. It's a 100-mile race that lasts over, 2 years? How long is the president? I mean, really, when they first come out and start deciding, I'm going to run for president, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that type of thing. What do you see? You see a 2-year-long wedge going into this nation. The presidency is the greatest dividing factor in the nation. I don't care what you say. There'll never be another unifying president as long as I'm alive. I really doubt it. And if I get my way, we won't have a president. And we'll talk about that as well. I know it sounds crazy. It's something I've been thinking about and talking about for a while now. Yeah, we're going to talk about that too. So, let's get into a few announcements. Amazon.com. Not a sponsor, no. But my book, Community, is up for sale. That's Community is up for pre-order, Amazon.com. You have to pick the book up. This is not going away. If you know nothing of the show and nothing of the book, this is all you need to know. We're at each other's throats in this nation. I'm tired of it. You're tired of it. He's tired of it. She's tired of it. So rather than go on writing about how right the right is and how wrong the left is, or how right the left is and how wrong the right is, I like that. How wrong the right is. That's a nice line. How wrong the right is. Just has a ring to it. But anyway, the book is about neighbors. The book is about community. The book is about people and the interaction between people. It's about coming together. It's about person-to-person conversations within a neighborhood, getting to know a person and looking at people as a unique case, fighting isolation, fighting this self-imposed isolation we've created in our cars, at our desks, in front of our TVs, in front of our phones, in our homes, away from people. Fighting isolation, fighting centralization, the centralization of power over our food, the centralization of government power over our lives. Fighting dependency. Fighting the government-instilled dependency in the nation, which is robbing people of their liberty. Fighting the dependency that we have on electronics. And fighting contamination. Those 4 items are high on my list, rather. And they're in that book as well. And the crux of it is community gardening. The crux of it is communicating within the nation, not just people. Or not within the nation, within your community, in your neighborhoods. Not just people to people, but also creating a network of communication through email, where you can do any number of exciting things. Listen, I'm proofing the book now. It's filled with so many good ideas. And I know it's not the solution. It's not the 100% solution. But I can tell you, if you buy the book, you read the book, you lend it out. You give it to people in your neighborhood. You give it to people at your work. They're going to get it. They're going to understand this thing is not done with yet. It's not. I was listening to a guy today who was saying that he thinks that the United States is going to break up like the ex-Soviet Union soon. What? Is that what you want? No. People are cool. They're the coolest things in the universe. There's nothing cooler than people. I'm telling you right now, you just don't know them. You look at them and you think there's something. Listen, I'll read you a little passage out of the book. Let me read you. Do you mind? Let me give you a little taste while we're on the subject of assumptions. It is assumption that makes us enemies. Never forget that. We create a narrative about the person before us and run with it. This could be based on dress, speech, attitude, and even race or religion. Everyone is guilty of this. In our society, we struggle to find order, and in doing so, we inflate subtle cues and assumptions about a person. Ba-boom. I think that's pretty much simply put, right? We inflate subtle clues and assumptions about a person. That's what this society is right now. I could read you another excerpt about the chemically altered primate, but I don't think it fits right now. Anyhow, you're going to love the book. It's up for sale at Amazon.com. Community. We have to spread the book around. Even if you don't buy it, this is all I'm asking. You don't want to buy it. You don't want to. I think the ebook's going to be like $4. Come on. $4 that can save the nation. It's not a conservative hit piece. It's not about we need to tariff China. We need to cut taxes. We need to do this and it has nothing to do with government. There was one chapter called No Kings, and it's about getting rid of the president. Beyond that, there's nothing political in the book. There's nothing even really conservative in the book. There's nothing political in the book. At the very beginning, I tell everyone what I am. Name's James Walton. Yes, I'm a prepper. Yes, I have conservative leanings. Let's move on from there. This is what I believe, and then we get into content. Because I want people to know who's writing the book. I want people to know what they're reading. But buy it. If you don't buy it, just share the link. Go to the website, share it, put it on your Facebook, put it on your Twitter, whatever it is. And give a little blurb. Are you tired of the violence in America? Share the book. Here's the answer. Here's an answer. Let's move on. Fire in October. Fire in October. What I want to do in October, since the trees will be ablaze, I was thinking to myself, you know what? Let's do 15 days of fire in October. So we're going to do 15 days of fire in October. What do I mean by that? I would like to see, and I don't know who's going to get involved or not. I do have a spare can of survival seeds from the Patriot Press, or what was it? My Patriot Supply. I wouldn't mind giving away as a prize. But I want to see 15 fires, and I'm going to do it myself also, but I'm going to see 15 unique fires started in October. I don't mean buildings. I'm talking about go back to your fire pit, set up a fire pit, dig a hole, whatever it is, and start a fire in 15 different ways in the month of October. Bow drill, whatever. However you want to do it. Magnesium, fire, steel, lighter, matches. That's what I'd like to see. See people get creative. See people get creative because firecraft is very important. It doesn't have to be a blaze, doesn't have to be a bonfire. I just want to see a spark. I want to see some tinder go up in flames and know that, okay, yeah, that's a fire. That's a fire. So let's do this. Let's take a quick break. We'll come right back for more of the I Am Liberty show. And when we return, we will talk about why we have a president. Why? Why do we have a president? We'll talk about the privilege of marriage. Yes, we'll talk about marriage and the privilege when we return on the I Am Liberty show. We are divided over our kings. And Of kings we have many. Believe it or not. Like it or not, of kings we have many. We have people who get a spot in office and they stay in office until they're so old and wrinkled and the dementia has set in so deeply that they can't even remember what they're talking about. You needn't look far. Look to the state of California and some of their representation if you don't believe me. Look at Senator John McCain. How the mighty have fallen. And you tell me we don't have kings. If we didn't have kings, then we'd already have term limits. Right? If we did not have kings, we'd already have term limits. But there's such a holding back on term limits. Because why? I turned on Sean Hannity today and holding them accountable. And I was driving with my two boys and I thought to myself, where's the accountability? What do you mean holding them? There's only one way to hold them accountable, and that's you do the job for 2 to 3 years, and then you're out. And we don't want you back for 10 years. If you want to come back that bad after a decade, then you can come back and serve your country again. That's it. It's that simple. No, we have kings. We have kings, and if you don't believe me, have an issue in your state, go ahead and try to email your representative. Go ahead and try to email your representative, see if you can get anything. I made one simple email not long ago about voting on the situation of the statues here within the state of Virginia. It's a very important issue here in Virginia because I live in the once capital of the Confederacy. And I told my governor, listen, man, let's avoid another Charlottesville. Let's hold a statewide vote on what happens to statues. Because that's what you do in a democracy. But you see, we don't have a democracy, so I didn't even get an email back. I didn't even get an acknowledgement. And instead, thank God for the incredible Richmond City Police, we did not have a similar issue here as they had in Charlottesville. But do we want to wait until there is one? Do we want to wait until more blood is shed? But when you have kings, you don't vote. And I'm telling you, the division in our nation has nothing to do with football players. The division in our nation was brought upon us. It was definitely foisted upon us by the man who ran the office for 8 years prior. You can't not tell me that the way he handled himself and the way he handled situations in this nation didn't set us back. Didn't set us back decades with race relations in this nation. And now we have the antithesis in the president today. But for the last few elections, it's just come incredibly clear to me that all our president does is divide the nation. The presidential election divides the nation. And it's at such a point now, if you don't believe me, yell, I voted for Trump in a crowded room. Yell, I voted for Trump in a crowded room. How many people deny the fact that they voted for Donald Trump out of fear? Out of fear for their job, out of fear for their kids, out of fear for their own personal safety. So in a nation that needs unity, I can only go to one thing, and that's the president. Why do we vote on a president? Why do we have a president? What is the benefit of having a president? The time has come and passed, my friends. It's over. It's over, and I've talked about this before on the show. We need more representation, and we need accountable representation in the states. That's what we need, because states are the countries now. That's it. States are nations now. We call them states. They're giant, they're massive, and they're incredibly diverse. In my state alone, I have a mountain community. I have a mountain community to my west. To my north, I have the nation's capital. And I have a Northern Virginia demographic, or I'm not sure how you would put it, that is so incredibly different from everywhere else in the state. basically the opposite of the mountain. Well, I don't know. Then you have the East End, right? You had the East and the coastal section of Virginia. Very different than the Northern Virginia. Very different than the Mountain Virginia. Then you have Central Virginia, where I live, which is one of the greatest places in the planet, in my opinion. Then you have Southern Virginia, which is, you know, you don't want to say Deep South because it's Virginia, but when you look at the Deep South and the characteristics that make it up, you see a lot of those in Southern Virginia. We need representatives for all of those different regions, because not only are there different cultures in each section, but there are also very different needs. Very different needs. And a president doesn't help us in any of those regions. How could he? It's a nation in and of itself. Virginia is a nation. In the way that they referred to it as a nation during the Civil War, it still is and before, it still is very much their country. This is our country of Virginia. When you look at the amount of people and the amount of variations in culture, that's only getting more and more. The president is a wedge. It's a blue versus red wedge. And I think the time has passed. And I say, rather than us go for another loopy maniac election, which will feature Katy Perry versus Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, I say we scrap it. I say we scrap it and we give the people the ability to vote on issues that affect their lives. Ballot initiatives every 4 years. Well, no, I'm sorry, I take that back. Ballot initiatives and votes every year. Every year. Hot button issues will be decided through all the ways that they're decided now. The health cares, the immigrations, all of that. States need to vote more. The country needs to vote more. And not on people who can be corrupted. Not on people whose special interests can get a hold of and say, let me give you a little kickback and I'll give you some of this money. No, we don't need it. We really don't need it. We don't need the guy with the black mustache. We don't need, it's like Slugworth. That's what I think about. I think about Slugworth from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory getting a hold of the power. I'm going to be a politician, I think. Yeah, I think I'm going to make this a better nation, honey. Honey, stop playing Candy Crush, honey. Look at me. I'm going to make this a better nation. I'm going to run for office. And he gets the young hopeful, gets there, gets some backers, raises some money. And as soon as he starts to get into a position of influence, Slugworth comes out of the back with the glasses and whispers in his ear, kickbacks, pork, contracts. And he looks around like Mike TV. And before you know it, this guy's standing on the podium giving a speech in the primary. And he's going to be your president. Him and Slugworth are going to run the nation. And that was the appeal with Donald Trump. That maybe he didn't get the talking to from Slugworth. But we forgot that he was Slugworth. We don't need a president. Okay? There are millions of great people in this nation. And they can be called upon to figure our issues out. We don't need a president's cabinet. We don't need it. We need good representatives who are held accountable by the people. And their accountabilities can be very simple if you allow the people to vote. Well, we voted on this, so why didn't you do it? Well, then there's no re-election. After 3 years, those representatives get the bump, and then you get more people from your state who have vested interest in the actual success of the state, not of the back pocket. And when a big issue comes along, here's the beauty. When a big issue comes along, like healthcare reform, like immigration, like technology, like war, well, all those brilliant representatives come together and they build a team. They build a Justice League of some of the greatest minds in our nation to address the problem. And those people come together out of their civic duty and they figure out the problem. So rather than have Donald Trump and some Republicans and some Democrats sit down and say, how should we do health care for 360 million people? No. You pull together doctors, insurance workers, you pull the greatest minds in the business, and you tell them, look, we need you. Give us some dates. We're all going to get together. We're going to spend however long it takes, a month, months, a year, whatever it takes. The government will pay. Just pay. Who cares? What do you think? We're worried about the dollar all of a sudden? The dollar is in the tank. It's only whether you know it or not. If you want me to really go off the deep end here, China and Russia are already trading oil in gold. Okay? They're trading oil for gold, and it's not going to stop. This idea that the American dollar is going to be the reserve currency around the world for our lives, it's just not going to happen. There will be a reaping on the American dollar, and it's going to be ugly for the American people if you're not prepared. If you're not prepared, it's going to be ugly. If you think that buying silver and buying gold is silly, I'm never, for what? Inflation will come. Don't call me. But we're divided by our kings. That's it. We're divided by our red and blues. Look at the NFL situation. What would happen if we didn't have a president who was tweeting about that? What if we had a president who didn't say anything about anything because there was no figurehead? What if there was no figurehead? What if we had a very simple vote about... And again, these things work themselves out. Look at the ratings for the NFL. If you don't like that they take a knee during the national anthem, if you're a team owner, you fire them. That's completely up to you. If they're the NFL, you fine them. That's completely up to you, your business. But if you're a regular guy, then you don't spend $300 per ticket to go watch people who do things you don't believe in. That's the beauty of capitalism. That's why it's wonderful. Because the people still have power. If football was government owned and everybody got a ticket, everybody gets one ticket to go see the Eagles every year. And go with dad and go see the Eagles no matter what. Then guess what? You don't show up, it doesn't matter. They don't give a shit if you don't show up. You still, taxes go to the government spreads the tickets out, and everybody gets a ticket next year, and the people get paid, and who cares? But in an evil capitalist system that is destroying the world and destroying happiness and destroying everything all across the nation and all across the world, in an evil capitalist system, all we have to do is turn the TV off. All we have to do is stop buying hats and shirts and shoes and stickers for our car and earphones for our phone. Yeah, that's all. That's all you do. You cut the money off. And you know what happens? Roger Goodell up there, and all the Bob Crafts and the people who own teams, the Jeffrey Lurie's, you know what they do? They go, these pockets are feeling mighty empty lately. Maybe I better bring the hammer down on these dolts on the field and tell them to listen, we got a product here, okay? You may think you're spectacular in every way, but we got a product to sell here, and guess what? It ain't selling. It happens. That's the beauty of capitalism. You might hate it. You might think it's mean because you're a loser and you can't figure out how to make any money. I can't help you. Matter of fact, I can help you. I can help you, and I'd gladly help you. But if you want to go the other way, you can become a headline like this one from the Miami Herald. In Venezuela, they were teachers and doctors. To buy food, they became prostitutes. At a squat concrete brothel on the muddy banks of the Arahuaca River, Mr. Gabriel Sanchez rattled off previous jobs of the women who now sell their bodies at his establishment. First of all, Jim Wiss over at the Miami Herald, his establishment? Come on, dude. What in the hell kind of writing is that? For a whopping fee of $25 an hour, you can have yourself a doctor or a teacher. And maybe you guys could do flashcards or talk about kinesiology or, infectious disease. Or you can do some things under the covers, I guess. We've got lots of teachers, some doctors, many professional women, and one petroleum engineer, he yelled over the din of the Valentino music. All of them showed up with their degrees in their hands. All of them came from Venezuela. As Venezuela's economy continues to collapse amid food shortages, hyperinflation, and U.S. sanctions, waves of economic refugees have fled the country. Those with the means have gone to places like Miami, Santiago, and Panama. The less fortunate find themselves walking across the border into Colombia, looking for a way, any way to keep themselves and their families fed. Seen a mass migration in Colombia of 350,000 Venezuelans. I wonder how much Colombia enjoyed a little taste of their own medicine. But that's what you get when you worship the socialist form of government. How lovely! How wonderful. Right? You spend all your money and all your time becoming a brilliant young lady. You spend your nights whoring around, in practice for your coming job when the economy finally falls apart, because you thought it was nice to get free college and free dental and free medical and free books and free everything. And that's what happens. That's what happens in a nation that eats itself alive. That's what happens at a nation that eats away at the middle class and leaves nothing for anyone. Want to talk about the privileged few who marry? From the Upshot, from the New York Times, Class Divide, Claire Kane Miller. How did marriage become a mark of privilege? This word, this P word here, I would like to erase it. It sickens me. The sight of the word just sickens me. Because here's why. When I grew up, my parents were very clear. And society was very clear too, really. I watched my parents live a relatively happy life with very little money. But you know what they did? They did some things. They got married, they had kids, and they worked hard as they could, to provide. And all my life I watched other families do the same, my friends' families, the whole thing. You know? And you were playing on a certain kind of game board. It was this game board of go to school, get your degree, get a job. Hopefully you get lucky enough to find a good woman, do your best to keep her, marry her, because that's what you do, and have some babies. And that's it. And from that moment on, life gets really unbelievable. And here I sit having played that game. And I've passed go. I've collected my $200. It's been a great ride. But what happened somewhere around my mid-20s was popular culture flipped the board. They flipped the board on me. While I was busy playing one game, they turned it into another game. They told me that I was supposed to win the game. Because I was a white kid, they said, well, this is too easy a game. This game is too easy, this game of life for you, because you have a certain skin color. This game of life is far too simple for you. In fact, you should feel pretty bad about how easy this game of life is, because you've come from a class of privileged white people. And the word privilege, I'm gagging on it just looking at it. So it's gone so far now that because I decided to do the right thing, because I toughed it out in a high school that I hated and barely made it out of, because I found something I liked to do and made a living, because I fell in love with a great woman who made me a better man, because I was brave enough to have children, raise children, do whatever it takes to raise the children, I get to be put on a shelf way down low in society now, maybe the lowest rung, the white male rung, the privileged white male rung, which has now just become a little more tasty, thanks to a brilliant article by one Claire Kane Miller from the New York Times. So, marriage, she writes, which used to be the default way to form a family in the United States, regardless of income or education, has become yet another part of American life reserved for those who are most privileged. I wish you could hear the crickets. Fewer Americans are marrying overall, and that's my fault. And that's your fault if you're white, and if you have any bit of money, and if you've decided to be an actual adult, an actual man, and marry the woman you're with, rather than string her along for as long as she can take your bullshit, and then once she gets, has had it up to her ears with your nonsense and your inability to commit, she leaves you in a violent flurry, and you call her crazy. Fewer Americans are marrying overall, and whether they do so is more tied to socioeconomic status than ever before. In recent years, marriage has sharply declined among people without college degrees while staying steady among college graduates with higher incomes. Currently, 26% of poor adults, 39% of working class adults, and 56% of middle and upper class adults ages 18 to 55 are married. According to a research brief published from the two think tanks, the American Enterprise Institute and Opportunity America. Whoa. If you want a side job, if you want a side task, American Enterprise Institute and Opportunity for America sound like two of probably the most left-wing institutes and institutions available for research. I don't know that that's true. I'm not making any accusations. I'm saying on the face of it, the American Enterprise Institute and Opportunity America, little suspect. But let's go on with it. So they're blaming money and education and lack thereof for the fact that nobody wants to be married. It's not the fact that we've grown up in a culture, in a Sex and the City culture. We've grown up in a culture that has spit on marriage, that has told you, what? What's the great line about marriage? It's just a piece of paper. Dude, it's just a piece of paper. It's just a piece of paper. What? What? You think you're special because you have a piece of paper? You and your girl have I don't have a piece of paper. We have kids. Everything's cool. It's just a piece of paper. 51% of poor adults, 57% of working class adults, and 65% of middle and upper class adults were married in 1990. This is such a farce of an article, it's unbelievable, because we all know why marriage is failing. We all know why marriage is failing. She makes it out to sound like it's because men aren't making money anymore. So the women don't want a man who's not making more money than them, which, if you know women, real women, that's one of the least important things in this day and age. It really is. It's one of the least important things. If you're really dealing with a smart woman who understands what marriage is all about, what family is all about. If you're dealing with a woman who's more worried about flowers and rings, then yes. But if you're dealing with a real head-on-her-shoulders woman, the last thing she's worried about is, so long as the guy's not a bum. If he's making a living, he's making a living. But the fact of the matter is, women are more educated, they're making more money. Even though that's supposed to not be true either. Women don't want to risk... Here you go. This is what Amanda Jane Miller says. Women don't want to take a risk on somebody who's not getting or going to be able to provide anything, said Sharon Sassler, a sociologist at Cornell who published Cohabitation Nation, Gender, Class, and the Remaking of Relationships with Amanda Jane Miller last month. As marriage has declined, though childbearing has not, which means that more children are living in families without two parents and the resources they bring. Hold on. Let me read that again. As marriage has declined, childbearing has not. That's because we shag like minks, baby. Yeah, we just have promiscuous sex rather than get married rather. We can't find the dad, or the dad runs out because he never wanted to be married, because his buddies and television told him, well, marriage isn't that, it's the end of your freedom, man. What are you going to do? Your life is over. It's all over. Once you get married, dude, it's all over, man. You're not going to wake up on Sunday feeling like you got hit by 2 Mack trucks and have to make an appointment for an STD check. Life is all but over after marriage. Let's talk about opportunity for a second. As marriage has declined, though childbearing has not, which means that more children are living in families without 2 parents and the resources they bring. Now, I'm supposed to believe that opportunity is only held for the privileged. The privileged white people. But what does it say about opportunity if we do not marry yet we have children? And we bring these children up in a home where the resources are too sparse to give them what they need. Do you think that has an effect on opportunity, my friends? The I Am Liberty faithful out there listening, do you think that not having 2 parents in a household and not having the resources in the household has an effect on opportunity? What do you think? I'm talking on a whole here. The sharpest distinction in the American family life is between people with a bachelor's or not a bachelor's, said Andrew Cherlin, a sociologist at Johns Hopkins, author of Labor's Love Lost, The Rise and Fall of the Working Class Family in America. I don't know where, there's nothing really to back that up. He just says that's the sharpest distinction. I could read this thing and mock it. I could read this article and mock it. There is something interesting here. It says a bad economy lowers the cost of having bad values. Substance abuse, engaging in crime, not looking for a job right away, said Gordon Hanson, an economist in the University of Cal, who wrote a paper with David Autor of MIT and David Dorn of the University of Zurich. Never married adults cite financial instability as a major reason for being single, especially those who are low income or under 30, according to a new Pew. It has nothing to do with this. I mean, it may have a very little bit to do with this. But the truth of the matter is, and I'm getting out of the article now. Claire, thanks for the fodder. I appreciate it. The cultural reinforcement people relying on contraception and abortion reinforces a norm that you don't have the kid with the wrong guy. Ms. Wilcox suggests a bigger emphasis in high schools and pop culture on what's known as the success sequence. Degree, job, marriage, baby. The idea that if people follow the sequence, their odds of landing in poverty are much lower, he said. What a mean guy that is. Jeez, Mr. Wilcox. They'll string his ass up. Mr. Wilcox suggests a bigger emphasis in high schools and pop culture on what's known as the success sequence. Degree, job, marriage, baby. What a radical. He must be a white nationalist, that Mr. Wilcox. That's the crux of the issue. That's the crux of the issue. Now, you don't have to follow that. You don't need a degree to get a good job. But you do need to get married before you have kids. I know that hurts. Makes people upset. Right? Because people want to make all kinds of excuses for marriage. Why? Because this is why. Because marriage is a measurement. It's a very distinct and clear measurement. And when you begin to measure yourself, which I think is one of the most important things you can do in life, one of the most important things you can begin to do in life, and you can start doing it today, is to measure yourself with real numbers. We measure ourselves in some things. How much money do I make each week? I know exactly how much money I make each week. My boss pays me the same amount. I know exactly what I'm worth in that game. Marriage is a clear measurement of yourself because it's very simple. I've made a commitment to this woman. I'm going to be with her for the rest of my life. I'm going to do my best to make her as happy as I can. With every decision that I make, I'm going to consider this woman. And you know what happens? It can go real bad. It can go real bad, particularly if you're a loser and you don't put the time in. Because like I said before, love is not a magic thing. It's not a magic thing that happens and then it's done. The struggle to find the right woman is nothing compared to the struggle to keep the right woman. The struggle to find the right woman is nothing compared to the struggle to keep the right woman, which is nothing compared to the struggle that you will have when you decide to marry that woman and when you decide to have kids with that woman. That's the problem with happily ever after. You read Snow White, she meets the prince, happily ever after. Love is nothing like that. Love is a battle. It's a war from start to finish. And finish usually is you next to a hospital bed crying your eyes out over the dead body of the person that you devoted your whole life to. This is the reality. It hurts. But the problem has nothing to do with privilege for marriage. It has good and bad decisions. That's it. It has to do with the idea that you have to take ownership of your decisions. Men in particular, man, you have to start taking ownership of your decision making. Men are like my 2-year-old son. I look at men and I see little 2-year-olds. They wander from one. This is my son. My 2-year-old son, Jacob. He wanders from one stimulation to the next. That's what he does all day. Right? I take time. I get some work done, and I watch him. Right? I bought a standing desk, particularly so I could work from home and watch my son. It's on wheels. I can wheel around the house. I watch him. He bounces from one set of stimulation to the next, and when I look at grown adult men, I see the exact same thing. I see men who bounce from the bar. They bounce from the beer to the girls, to the games, to the sports, to the this, to the bikes, to the one form of simulation, to the next, and constantly, and somebody stimulate me, please. Please, somebody come and stimulate me. Give me something. Do something with me. Do something to me. And just wandering aimlessly through life, never placing a stake in anything. Never taking ownership of any decision. Hey, you want to go to the bar? Yeah, I'll go to the bar. I know. Let's go have a couple of drinks. Hey, you want to go? I'm going to the bar. Yeah, whatever. I don't care. Let's go do that. The moment you place a stake in a business, in a marriage, in whatever it is, the moment you make a commitment, that's when you can really start living and you can really start measuring. You live in this fog, right? You live in this purgatory of sensory exploitation, and that's what it is. You bounce from one stimulation to the next, and you never own anything. And what's great about never owning anything is you can't really fail. You can't really fail if you don't really own anything, if you don't own up to anything. She's just my girlfriend, She got crazy, shit went nuts. I gave her the boot. It was over. I'm on the market again, boys. Let's go get hammered. It's real easy. No, I don't have any kids. What do you think, I'm going to raise kids in this crazy environment? In this crazy world? Donald Trump's the president, for God's sakes. What am I going to have kids for? In the haze of stimulation. Oh, the orgasms. The women. Oh, it's so fun. I spend all my money. I go home broke and I wake up Sunday like I got radiation poisoning from a nuclear blast. I'm going to tell you right now, man, you have to take ownership. One of the things that I hear guys talk about and complain about with their girlfriends all the time, I ask her what she wants to eat. She doesn't know what she wants to eat. I ask her, what do you want to have for dinner, honey? You want to go out? What do you want to go eat? You want to get burgers? What do you want to get? Oh, I don't know. Whatever you want. I don't know. I asked you, what do you want to get to eat? What do you want to eat? Just tell her what you want to eat. It's it's a very shallow example, but you can't even pull that one off. You got to own your decisions. You got to own your decisions. That's all I can tell you about men in this nation today. There is very little ownership. Now, when you get to like the social level, they own everything. I'm for women's rights and transgender rights and the rights of everybody, and I will fight for them, and I will... When it comes to the personal level of pass and fail in life, it gets very dodgy. So what I'm telling you is that this idea that this article is trying to push forward, that only the privileged can get married. You need to replace the word privilege with brave, okay? Only the brave are getting married. Only the courageous are getting married. Only the people who understand that they're going to stand in front of an altar in front of their whole family and say, yes, I'm not going to be a loser. I'm not going to cheat on my spouse. I'm going to do everything I can to make this relationship work. And you know what? If we both give it our all and it doesn't work, then we're going to face these same people and we're going to tell them, look, we're getting a divorce. It's not going to be pretty. But we're going to have a marker here, a measurement. And your failure is going to be noted, good or bad. And that's what I need out of you men out there. You know, you've got to set goals. You've got to make these commitments in life. Just like I do. It's just what it is. How many things have I talked about on this show? Fell apart, didn't work out, failures after. You know how many failures I've had in my life? You've got two choices. You can jump into life and own your life and own everything about your life and own the decisions that you make. And you can fail fast, which is a theory I heard not long ago and I really liked it. You can fail fast, right? You get in, you own your decision, you find out it doesn't work, you explain that to the people that are important to you. Well, I opened a business, it didn't work out, so we went bankrupt and now we've got to recover. Or you can live a life of doing nothing and fail nice and slow. You can fail nice and slow over a 20, 30-year period, and when you get up in the morning and you're 45 years old and you have no one and you have nothing, your boys have grown up, they got married and had kids, and you've got nothing. You're 45, you still work at the same job, you never took a risk, you never took ownership of your decisions, you just went with the flow, went from one stimulation to another, and then you can be there. When I'm 45, I'll probably be on the cliff side of a mountain in a tent with my two boys, and we'll be seeking out something to shoot or some beautiful trout to fish for. It all depends on what you want, man. But I know what you want. You want what everybody wants. You're just scared to go after it. You're scared to go after it because you're scared it might not work. Well, guess what? There are no guarantees. We're all one bad day away. Like the Joker said, all it takes is one bad day. Can change everything. Believe me. So forget about marriage is for the privileged. Marriage is for the courageous. That's all. Marriage is for the courageous. Don't be silly. You know, we can talk about these pebbles in the shoe, these little issues. These issues that mean nothing at all, really, at the end of the day. Because if we can't get a handle on North Korea, nobody's going to have these issues. If you don't believe that the EMP is a real threat, I can promise you, it only takes one EMP to ruin your day. And when you got guys launching rockets straight up in the air, you've got Iran launching rockets straight up in the air. They were doing that for a long time. And now you've got this guy launching rockets up in the air, test rockets. They're not going to strike San Diego. They're not going to strike San Francisco with a nuclear bomb. If anything, that bomb's going to be detonated high in the sky, way up there. It's going to be detonated way up there, probably off of a cargo ship coming to port. And it's going to level the Western power grid. And God only knows what happens after that. Or maybe they can do one better and they can hit us right in the center. And they can take East, West, and Texas power grids out. And, most statistics say that 90% of Americans would die within the first year if we lost our power grids. 90%. You ready for that? Suddenly, the NFL isn't such a big deal, is it? I'm going to leave you with a few things. I want to talk about children. At my son's school, they put in this cool new, sort of like a American Ninja Warrior little thing, a little obstacle course on rope. And the kids, man, they were pulling in on this thing. It was new. It was just up today. And people were just lines of kids on this thing, hanging on ropes and walking on steps that are like a rope bridge style thing that led to just two pieces of rope, one run across the top, one run across the bottom. You hold onto the top and you shimmy down to And I was watching the kids and I just said to myself, this is life. This is all of life right before my eyes. This is us. This is you. This is me. We're on this high wire. We're on this tightrope. We're walking. And we're walking, and sometimes we slip. Sometimes we fall off the high wire, man. And depending on where you are in life, you could fall far, you could fall short. Everyone falls. There's no getting around that. Everyone falls. But we're moving into a time when this is the most important part of what I'm talking about. We're moving into a America where when people fall, just like the children did tonight, when people fall, we reach the hand down and we pick them up. We have to get there. We have to get there in this nation to the point people are going to fall. You're going to fall one day. It happens to all of us. You're going to fall off that rope and you're going to hit the ground with varying degrees of damage. And rather than go to Twitter and rather than go to Facebook and highlight, rather than go to your blog and highlight that someone has fallen, because when someone falls, it's a news story now. Rather than highlight the fact that they've fallen, as Americans, we have to help. We have to reach down into the muck and the mire, and we have to help our fellow Americans up. We're doomed if we don't. We're doomed if we don't. The book is called Come Unity Community. Come Unity Community. Pre-order, Amazon. If you don't want to spend the money, it's fine with me. It's fine with me. It's going to be out in hardback also. You can wait till October 13th when it comes out to get that. Share. This is the most important book that's going to come out. It's not a tremendously long read. It's the reduction of this show and these thoughts about how to get people to talk to one another again and to do the right thing. Look for the fire in October. We're going to do 15 days of fire in October. That's what I want to do. So share news about the book. Share the link. Buy the book if you want. Get your fire-making skills ready for 15 days of fire in October. And what else do I got for you? I've got one more thing. How much have I given you? T.S. Eliot, Privilege for Marriage, NFL Division, Venezuelan teachers turning to prostitution, kids on the tightrope, the book, the fire. Why do we have a president? No kings, no kings, no king. I'm reading you my show notes. The nuke will ruin everything. You want some no kings gear? No kings gear. Looks good. It's looking good on people. I'll tell you that much. I've got one more thing for you. It's from an evil white man named William Ernest Henley. An evil, bearded, white guy who was born in 1849, died in 1992, was an English schoolmaster who became a successful poet, critic, and editor. Best known for this poem called Invictus. And it's just 4 stanzas. I'm going to read the whole thing because I think it speaks to where we need to be. So we opened the show with T.S. Eliot's Hollow Men. We talked about where we are. We are the Hollow Men. Now I want to read to you Invictus, the Unconquerable. 4 stanzas. It's about where we need to be. Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade. And yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul.